drunk history.
Drunk history.
That's a great show.
I'm a bit drunk. Today has been KP's birthday, so we have been celebrating since 10 a.m. English style. So I am fed up of margaritas and mimosas.
Oh,
I went to the launch of the Cambridge new school, which again lots of wine. So yeah, I am drunk. I don't know if you want introduction, but I am a little bit tipsy.
no problem.
Oh, that is very nice. I was thinking actually, it's 5 o'clock here. It's 5 o'clock here. I'm ready for a glass of wine. Should we all become civilized? Maybe stop the recording for a moment, or you continue. I'll come back with my glass of wine. You can tell them about.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but we were planning for Pablo to lead today's meeting with
Dugant and others. I mean, Dugant is a very interesting figure.
Ara. For one of our viewers who is seeing Pablo for the first time, I think it's worth introducing Pablo.
Okay, so hello everyone. Do you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah.
I believe Pablo Funes is a part of the Royal Institute of British Architects and an instructor with the CPI, and I'm sure there's more that I'm leaving out.
He is the director of education.
My business card is folds so that I can get the whole title. It's folding. I need to unfold my business card.
And Pablo is the nephew of the very famous French actor Louis de Funès.
Yes, I am. We are very loosely, extremely loosely related. So in such a way that we share surname. That's our very loose relationship. And I am also very well connected with a character called Funes el Memorioso, which was a novel by Jorge Luis Borges. The surname Funes is everywhere. The funny story is that Funes el Memorioso was actually, if you have watched The Name of the Rose,
yes,
and you remember Jorge de Burgos is an alter ego of Funes el Memorioso in Borges, which was the homage that Umberto Eco was doing to Borges. Because Funes el Memorioso was the librarian or a library where all knowledge was being forgotten. And he could only remember.
Just like the internet.
Yes. Yeah, Borges was precluding the internet. That's a very good definition of the internet. A library where all the knowledge is forgotten. I like it.
I think it's really accurate. You guys are running the show. I'm going to come back with wine and
we are so losing precious time.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. So apologies, everyone. So basically, we're going to talk today about a person who has been a little bit forgotten about history, but while on one side, modernists love him because they think that he was the person who cemented modernism. On the contrary, he didn't. I mean, it's like usually happens with the people who everyone quotes, but nobody has read. Dugant is claimed, same as Logier and Ledoux and Boulez, like the precursors of modernism. Well, he actually wasn't. He was a professor at the École Polytechnique, not the École des Beaux-Arts. So he was more a professor on the engineering side, and he was a product of the French Revolution. And the important thing is that it was a product of the most enlightened part of the French Revolution, because the French Revolution comes obviously with the idea of ending with the ancien regime and creating the new world for the new citizen. And what does the new citizen need? The new citizen, according to the very, very radical revolutionaries, they didn't need churches, they didn't need palaces, they needed buildings, they needed libraries, they needed barracks, they needed courthouses. And to build that, they needed architects capable of doing that. And the revolutionaries thought that all the other architects, all the ancien regime architects, didn't know what they were doing because they were corrupted by the vices of the ancien regime. So Dugant and the École Polytechnique, so they cancel the academy, the Royal Academy, and they create the École. They create the École des Beaux-Arts, but also they realize very soon that in the École des Beaux-Arts, it's taking a lot of time to achieve the results because they're also painting, sculpting, they're doing too many things. So they create the École Polytechnique to create a range of military architects that will be capable of building the new buildings for the new society. And this gets even more accelerated once Napoleon becomes the emperor. Why? Because Napoleon is expanding through the whole Europe, is expanding the empire, and he needs, in the territories he's conquering, he needs infrastructure. So that infrastructure has to be built. There is no other discussion that has to be built in classical styles. And that's what Dugand enters. So what is the important thing about Dugand? Dugand starts talking, he creates the lessons on architecture, very, very interesting book, which is a resume of all the lectures that he's giving. And he's giving only 2 years to train the students. He doesn't have time. And in the text, he says, I don't have time to enter into endless discussions about, for example, the rustic hut, or the history of the Corinthian capital, or the different types of which is the right Doric order. So, because at the end of 18th century, there was a big debate, which is the right Doric order? We have 20 types of Doric orders, which is the right? And then people were fighting. So people, the same way that you have Manchester United versus Liverpool, or Chelsea versus Arsenal, or Madrid versus Barça, you had Vitruvius versus Serlio, Serlio versus Vignola, etc.
What were the differences between the different Doric orders?
They were minimal. They were sometimes a little bit on the proportion, in the sequence of moldings. There is not a single Doric order. There are different versions of the Doric order, because Vitruvius is not very clear. You have the Vitruvian Doric, but none of the buildings found in antiquity followed the characteristic of the Vitruvian Doric. So the new architects in the Renaissance, they just create new orders based on the best interpretation of the Vitruvian text and the ruins of antiquity. So all that, the students had to draw all the Doric of antiquity, all the Ionics, a lot of buildings from antiquity. And therefore, they were wasting a lot of time. And when you are spending 6-7 years studying, that's okay. But if you are working if you have just 2 years, you need to learn one order, one type of each order. So Dugand, in a very enlightened way, he says, okay, I have measured all the orders from the different treatises, and I'm doing the average. And I'm telling you, this is a no-nonsense business. The Doric has this, the Ionic has this, the Corinthian has this. Forget about the orders. Forget about the debate about the orders. And then the modernists with that, they say, oh, Dugand doesn't want to build orders. No, Dugand considers that the orders are still the most important part of the composition. What he doesn't want you is to waste time figuring out about the orders, gives you, and then he tells you, after that, you have time to do more. And then he said, what you need to do is learn about composition, because you need to learn how to build a building. And then he comes with the idea, because again, you have to think, and he explains in the prologue of his text, so he's not deceiving anyone. He keeps telling, you have 2 years to learn all this, so in 2 years, you need to be able to design a court of justice. You need to be able to design any type of building. So he designs a system based on a grid. And then you trace the walls with a grid, you trace the circle in the intersection with the grid, etc., etc. So that means that he's giving a very precise method to design. Whether it is good, it is bad, it is obviously very dull, but it is very effective for the mid-range architect-engineers that the École Polytechnique wanted to create to expand the ideas of the Napoleon or the French Revolution, or the new architecture of the French Revolution. Here you can see a perfect example. That's the grid that Dugand is proposing, and then based on that grid, in the intersection, you put the columns and you put the walls. It's helping you to create. And then from there, you see that column, that diameter. From that diameter, you infer an order, but we're not going to be discussing here what order you want to build. You have just one order. You have the Doric order. I have told you that the Doric order is 1 to 8. According to Vignola, here you have my description of the order. You just do it. It was a lot of Dugand. It's a lot of you just do it. So that meant that, and he goes across that through his own lessons on architecture, which now the Getty Foundation has translated into English, so anyone can read them in English. I could read them in Spanish because, ironically enough, Rafael Moneo translated it in the 1980s.
Oh.
The last one you could imagine, right? To translate
yes.
That was in those, you remember those times, because obviously you remember, Nikos, when Rafael Monet was classical, when he was doing the Museum of Merida and all, and he did the extension of the Bank of Spain.
Well, yeah, approximately classical, but not hostile.
He was postmodernist, right?
Yeah, it was postmodernist. Oh, I mean, to be honest, the Roman Museum in Merida that Ara is pointing out, it has a power. It's a very powerful building.
Which one?
That one that you are seeing
this
now.
This one. Yeah, show us some.
That one.
Yeah.
That gallery is impressive. It's incredible. It transmits a power that or everyone in that museum. Once you enter into the small details, yes, it lacks.
Well, it lacks many things. However, I can say something good about it. In this building in particular, Monet allowed himself to be influenced positively, inspired positively by the existing structure, because there's an existing structure.
Correct. There is actually.
The new structure is inspired positively by the existing structure, and while the new structure lacks some of the beauty of the old structure, it does not fight against it. So altogether, you have an impressive building. He did not achieve the same success in his other buildings because they became more ideological, and they lost, and also his completely new buildings don't have an old structure to influence them. So something totally innovative. I think he missed it in those buildings that are completely innovative.
But back then, because I remember even when I was studying architecture in the early 2000s, when I was saying that I like classical, still in Spain, they were saying, "Oh, then you must like Monet's Roman Museum in Merida." So it was still considered as semi-classicist, you can say. Anyway, so the Spanish translation was done by Rafael Monet. And now there is
a Catholic church here in LA that Rafael Monet designed.
That's awful. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, I wrote a review of that for a Catholic church magazine.
Yeah, they are buildings to stop worshiping God. I think it was Ciro Lomonte, an architect from Sicily. I think
Ciro Lomonte is my good friend.
Yeah. I think he mentioned them buildings to stop believing in God, or buildings, churches for atheism, or something like that, in a very, very brilliant way. Because that Ciro has a very good way of saying things.
Yes.
I haven't heard from him in a lot of time, but I was a lot of contact with him in the times when everyone was on Facebook. So that's basically, I mean, that was the architecture of Monet, very 1980s postmodern. It's a building worth visiting. I mean, the Roman collection is also impressive, which is at the end of the day the reason why you go to that museum. And the basement is also very, very impressive because it has the two stages of the old city of Emerita. So you can see the city of the 1st century and the city of the 3rd century. And you can see some houses that were repurposed on the 3rd century. There is a very interesting part in the basement where you can see the frescoes of the 3rd century, and then they started digging, and then you see below them, you see frescoes of the 1st century. So very, very interesting, one of the houses.
Can you answer the question of why Monet lost his touch when he did something like that horrible church in Los Angeles?
I think it's because, as we all know, there was a lot of opportunism in postmodern. A lot of people just joined it because it was a fashion, and I mean, and Monet was probably one of them that they just jump onto the train of postmodernism, of that post-classical postmodern, if you want to name it, so just to put a framework on it. And then, I mean, when the wines started to move.
But look, Pablo, your explanation leaves a gap.
Okay.
There are several postmodernist architects who did unsatisfactory buildings from the beginning. But yes, Monet managed to do something that was satisfactory, in fact, rather good. And then after that, he lost it. How? Why did he lose it? I cannot understand that.
I think it's because probably he never wanted. Let's be mean. He never wanted to be good. Being good was just unexpected consequences of following the fashion.
I think that
It's
he
like
was.
sorry, just one thing. It's like very recently, I was speaking with a famous interior designer in UK, not my boss, which today is the birthday of my boss, Catherine Pulley, and everyone. I
Happy
mean,
birthday.
birthday
Happy
to
birthday.
Mrs. Pulley.
to Miss
Pulley.
Pulley. She's an amazing interior designer, designer of the decade. But this is another interior designer.
Mhm.
And then I asked her, you must be very proud of the legacy that you are building. And she answered me back, oh, Pablo, you are totally wrong. I am here for the money. If someone thinks I'm building a legacy, that's their problem.
Oh, that's hilarious.
With the same idea, no? Monet just joined the fashion of being postmodern, and the fact that he was also of being classical postmodern, and the fact that he was good, it's just an expected consequence of that. That's why when the fashion faded, he just moved back to the usual. Sorry, Doctor, you were going to say something.
Looking at Monet's work and having been educated by Charles Moore, one of the three leaders of postmodernism, one of the four if you include Sterling, I see that the actual movement came from the desire to make better architecture than modernism was producing at the time. And it really spelled for itself the end of rational, so to speak, rational modernism. And it was an attempt to bring the person and the individual experience back into design. But they did it modernly, in a modernistic way, because there was no education. Nobody knew how to build something like this. This is Roman era. This is Renaissance. What is this?
This is the cloister of the Hieronymus Monastery close to the Prado Museum. But this is much later. This is early 2000. So Monet was already modernist in that stage.
He was always modernist.
Yeah,
he was always modernist, and his work is modernist. It would be what you call what they called critical regionalism. That's what.
That's nonsensical. Ara, can you go back to what you showed? That's not.
What do you mean it's nonsensical? This is 100% critical regionalism as Frampton defined it.
Yeah, but that was nonsense. It was always nonsense and misleading. I want to explain to our audience that what we showed that the interior hall, that's not by Monet. That's the existing structure, which is much older, and then Monet put a new roof, I think, on it, and he put those.
Yeah, and the whole floor, the flooring was by Monet as well. There was a proposal by Rafael Manzano. If you take a look at it, or if you write Museo del Prado, Rafael Manzano, you will see what they were going to propose instead, the previous proposal.
Well, Manzano would have made it far nicer.
Manzano.
Manzano.
Yes, Manzano. Yes. Rafael, type Rafael, and then it will appear, hopefully.
Is that building his design? No.
Okay, you see the second one starting from the left? That one? Yes, click that one. So you see make it bigger. You see the cloister in there to the can I? Oh, no, I cannot mark. No, okay, sorry. But you see the cloister. You see the two levels of arches to the That is the same cloister that Monet later covered. Yes. So the only thing that was standing was the cloister, because that was part of a monastery that they was converted into a palace. Was the monastery of the Hieronymus that was converted into the Palacio del Buen Retiro, and then they heavily destroyed by the French during the war, the independence war against the French. And then it just stayed in ruins for almost two centuries. And then, because the Prado Museum needed an extension, they decided to put the cloister inside the museum. And that was the first proposal. This is from the 1960s. So, and this comes to the idea that I disagree with what you have said, Doctor, about the postmodernists wanted to bring back some sort of humanism, because the postmodernists, as Cyndi Lauper would say, just wanted to have fun. There was boys wanted to have fun.
Yeah, but you had to be there. You had to be there. And I am saying this with respect and love to those guys. They were lost in space, but they were genuine in their desire Frank Gehry is not post. They call
I
it
have to
postmodernism.
say that these
There are
people,
different types of postmodernism, and
Correct.
one of them was the historicist stuff with all this nonsense historically, and the other one was the Frank Gehry. The definition of postmodernism is that they put elements in the wrong place, and you see
Exactly.
it everywhere here.
but this
Yeah.
thing of
So it's a
elements in the wrong-
meaningless movement, but it was done with genuine feeling.
I disagree. The postmodernists wanted equally to annoy both the modernists that would lose their minds because they see a column, but also the still living generation of former classicists that
Yes.
would get mad because they see the column placed on the wrong position.
Exactly.
Because if they wanted to, like for example,
It wasn't to make them mad. The purpose was what they called irony and humor. And I think that Jenks, who pretty much created this whole movement,
but when you read
whatever. But, all this is splitting hairs. It is what it is. It came and it went, and it probably will come back at some point with some additional illiteracy. So I love the air conditioner in the butt.
Okay, let's move on to topics that are relevant for today's architecture and the architecture of the future.
So, and the thing is that the fact that these people were doing all these ironies, etc., at the same time that people were still doing classical, because Charles Jenks in 1973 or 1974, when he writes The Language of Postmodern Architecture, he's already quoting Quinlan Terry as too serious for the movement.
I think that was in the 80s, not in the 70s, if I may be
I
correct.
think
I don't know.
The late 70s, but the building that he quotes from Quinlan Terry, they are just past, click Borrow, and then there is a couple of pages where he's already showing buildings of Terry from the 70s. Plus, you need to log in.
I don't think this is leading anywhere. And
Yes,
Jenks misled the whole generation of students and architects. He was bought and paid for by wealthy architects, and he promoted them. He was a propagandist.
When was this book, The Language of Postmodern, first published?
Late 70s, I think.
I think it was late 70s.
Yeah.
When he talks about the demolition of Brute Ego, he talks about something extremely recent.
Yeah, it will just happen. Anyway, let's change things.
I have to say that Jenks was among my teachers, and one thing that he did do right was he made students do ridiculous, horrible designs, and I did one. And then he defended me opposite Tom Main with the tail of the pup in Los Angeles, the hot dog stand that looks like a hot dog in a bun. I created a hamburger stand on the plan of the Villa Rotunda, and with the seats were pickle slices. He defended me, and I was like, I couldn't believe what was happening. It was the most absurd moment of my career. Tail of the Pup is an iconic Los Angeles thing, and in this context, Monet's work, that cathedral, it falls into a sequence of Catholic Church structures seriously intended, including the church on brutalist church on Wilshire Boulevard, and then there is a 1920s beautiful cast concrete church next to USC. So it comes into a context. I'm not validating it. I'm not saying
but students today listening to us are going to be misled.
Why?
Because these pieces are not architecture, and
it's a practice that people. What I need to I can't step away from the idea that they really believed in what they were doing, these folks.
Look, yeah, but the product was deficient. Ara, please get rid of this. Jenks rubs me the wrong way.
I think they were believing in pleasing everyone, to be honest, and excuse the French. I think they were believing in just annoying everyone. They were just
I agree with Pablo here 100%. They were just annoying people, and they were making money. And Jenks became famous for annoying people and promoting.
Okay, whatever. It's actually factually untrue from what I know, because I got to meet all these guys, and they were operating from a different point of view. They didn't need to annoy. They really believed that they were bringing real value back in to answer the question of complexity and contradiction in architecture.
You know nothing about complexity. I happen to be an expert on complexity, mathematical complexity. They had no idea what
but that's not architectural complexity. It's mathematical complexity.
Mathematical complexity is the same as architectural complexity.
No, it isn't. Not in a million years, because mathematics does not.
I disagree with you totally.
Mathematics does not include it. Mathematics is about truth, but it has nothing to do with goodness. And all architecture at some point wants to. And here you have this piece of work, this manifesto of somebody who says, I don't understand anything. These are the
we understand complexity through mathematics. All right, get rid of this. This is garbage. Venturi never understood complexity. He was just talking superficially without understanding. So this book, my book, explains complexity, and it's already 20 years old.
Complexity for us, please.
Huh?
So define for us complexity, please.
Yes, it is a measure of things that are happening, and the more things that are happening, the more complex something is. Now, for a building, you have to have organization of complexity, otherwise it is random. So the more complexity you have, if it's random, it's useless for a building or for a human habitation or for any adaptation. But if you organize it for specific functions, for specific spaces and load bearing and the tectonics, then it becomes organized complexity, and you put in as much complexity as you need for the function. This is 100% functionalist approach.
Yes, it is. And I agree with you on that. And the term organized complexity seems to be an oxymoron, which tells me that you can see a lot of stuff going on, but you really don't know what it is, which is equivalent to architectural illiteracy. So I am lost in the conversation when it comes to our definitions, but I'm enjoying it because I love you very much. And
it doesn't matter, Nir. Your book is very good. And your book actually teaches students about organized complexity, even though you don't use the term.
Of course not, because I like simple language, but that's okay. Look, it's all of it is good. We're talking here about what Funes is describing as an in-your-face kind of activity. What you're talking about is this: how do we explain all this kind of stuff? And it does tell a story of. Look, we're in the middle of the 21st century, and it is weird. It is straight ahead weird, but it's actually exactly the same as all the other centuries, except for the 20th, which had
very weird.
Had a little bit of grace to it, despite the Holocausts. Many Holocausts.
Ara, can you go back to Nir's book? Let me make an announcement for our audience. Read Nir's book. This is Nir's book, part 2. It's an excellent book. You're going to learn how to be an architect. Don't waste your time reading Venturi or Jenks. Yeah, there it is. That's the cover. Thank you, Pablo.
I'm very, very touched by this. We work very hard to bring good training to people. Funes is a master teacher. We are here together, all of us. I could even say We're like the four sons in the Haggadah, kind of, in the Passover meal. And excuse me, please. I'm going to call you Ara, he who does not know how to ask. We have the good, the how is it? The good, the bad, the who does not know how to ask.
Ugly. Yeah, but you missed our friend.
I'm the inadequate. We've got the good and the bad, whatever that means.
Yeah, but
I'll be the bad.
Our regular.
That was a bad. I tried. And
Okay, it's a bad analogy because we're missing our good friend Ann Sussman. So
Yes.
we have at least 5. And we have our other friends and contributors who don't make it.
We should bring Robert Adam into this conversation. He'd set us straight.
I was actually going to point out that because 2 weeks ago there was a Congress of Classical Architecture in Madrid where Robert and I attended, and Robert was given only 15 minutes to give his lecture, which was a bit unfair, but we all were given the same amount of time. And Robert did a very good lecture because, I spoke about architecture and Spain about the 50s. Everyone was speaking about things and about people that didn't happen when we were all born. But Robert talks about things he had lived through. So he talks about the beginning of his career. He talks about the 70s. He talks about the 80s. And it is a very, very, very interesting speech. It will be published on YouTube very soon on Indo Spain. That's the sofa in his house. And also, he's going to do a live lecture for the Traditional Architectural Group. And he will repeat the lecture for us at the Classic Planning Academy, of course, because he's coming, because he's the chair of our board. But he will be doing a long lecture, about 30 to 45 minutes, about all the craziness of the 70s and 80s applied to architecture, which in UK, which is very fun. It's a very fun and interesting lecture to know how postmodernists arose outside, how the public perceived postmodernism, and how the public rejected postmodernism at the same time, and how all that switch come through. And for those not knowing, I'm going to talk a little bit. This Robert Adam is not the Robert Adam from 18th century. It's the contemporary Robert Adam. He's loosely related to him. We're going to publish an interview that myself and Alex Keys did to him last year. It's going to be published in the next edition of the Herald. No, it's not that Robert Adam.
That's the wrong Adam.
That's the other Robert Adam. That's the original Robert Adam.
Robert Adam. This other Robert Adam was one of the great, great, great architects ever.
Yes.
Arguably the finest interior designer ever.
As well.
But Ledoux is also a great interior designer. Did you know that?
This is a resume of his book. It's a reprint of his edition of the Works of Architecture of James and Robert Adam. And you can see
this is the University of...
No, that's the Palace of Diocletian in Split.
Okay.
Because, and Robert Adam is very interesting as well, because he's from Edinburgh. He is not from the cultural core. He's not from the cultural metropolis. He's from the periphery, from the cultural periphery. Edinburgh in the 18th century was like a rising city, but it is very interesting because there was a lot of architects in the 18th century that don't come from the metropolis, that come from the periphery, and they do very interesting things. You have Robert Adam.
Actually, Scottish people.
Yeah, but not only. Not only Scottish. You had the Scottish, you had the Irish country house, very interesting.
You have Nash, who came from Wales, basically.
Correct. But then, curiously enough, John Swan was from more cultural metropolis. But in France, you had Ledoux. In Spain, considering the whole empire, you had people so interesting like Pedro José Márquez, also known as the Mexican Vitruvius, because he was the most knowledgeable people of Vitruvius of the time, recognizing Rowe. He wrote like 17 books about Vitruvius. That's something that very few people know. And then we have also Manuel Tolsá.
Yeah.
an architect from Valencia that developed all his life in Mexico, and he developed the best neoclassical architecture of the whole American continent. And I'm going to say something very provocative, since the three of you are Americans, and I'm going to be provocative because we have an American audience as well. And I'm going to say this, and then you can argue. I'm going to be provocative. You cannot understand McKim, Met, and White without Manuel Tolsá.
Why?
Because he's the basis of all the neoclassical architecture in the American continent. McKim, Met, and White are amazing.
Well, he's the basis of the Spanish neoclassical. McKim, Mead, and White brought the French neoclassical over.
Exactly.
And if you actually know what happened in the Western Hemisphere in that time, the separation between the English-speaking and the Spanish-speaking was beyond extreme.
Oh yeah, I know very well.
Correct.
So there was very little connection between them.
I know.
Probably except for the folks who worked in both these places.
That's what I said. That I was.
And Tolsá, beyond the Mineria, what else did he do in Mexico?
Oh, he did a lot of palaces. He did the hospice in Guadalupe. He did three or four palaces in Mexico. He was the organizer of the Royal Academy in the of Mexico City. And he was the sculptor of that one, the Caballito. That's the Hospicio Cabañas in Guadalupe, which is amazing. If you type more images of that building, it has an amazing Doric portico in the entrance.
That was it, I think.
Wait, this is Tolsá.
Tolsá. Tolsá. Manuel Tolsá.
And you see that at some point he makes just like Monet did stuff that looks different, but somehow fits the location.
Now is you being the provocative one, insulting Mr. Tolsá.
No, he did in Mexico things that were, he was adapting to the location. He became Mexican when he was living in Mexico.
Correct.
Eventually. And he did this building, which is the finest neoclassical building in Mexico. It is neoclassical to the last micron. It's very, very well done. And this was the school of mining. You have to understand that Mexico was all about silver.
Gold.
And this is where they taught the guys how to mine for silver. So
Mexico was gold, Peru was silver.
No. Mexico, the Mexican hills are full of silver.
Okay.
Very little gold.
I think it was the other way around. Well, I mean, at least that's how it's always taught in Spain, that gold came from Mexico, silver came from Peru. Both of them.
Whatever.
I have friends who have family who own silver mines in Mexico.
I'm sure you're right, Nico. Sorry, just forget what I said.
Is there something significant about the horse statues? One time I was sitting in on the Classic Planning Institute thing.
That's the Caballito. That's the equestrian sculpture of Charles IV. So it's called the Caballito, the little horse, and it is very important because on one side is a sculpture of a Spanish monarch in Mexico City. So this is symbolizing the permanence of New Spain as part of the Spanish Empire, because although many people said that they were colonies, it was a piece of royalty under the same rights of the Castilians, and the white people had the same privilege as the white people in Spain, and the non-white people were equally unprivileged as non-white people.
There were 13 castes in Mexico.
I think there were a little bit more than that, but the caste was something.
However many you want.
Yeah, I mean, because they were varying. I think that the idea of the caste, I think that people have, the historiography has turned them thinking that they were like same in India. It was just names that people were putting, and they were changing every generation. Anyway.
Yes, but the idea of indígena and Spanish, the people who were Spanish but born here, all the different varieties of mixed, plus the African, gave them a broad spectrum
of different combinations.
Gentlemen, we are getting away.
we're getting away
from architecture. I would like to say something for our audience, that in those days, to be a gentleman and to have power, you had to have a horse. So you have to ride a horse. So when a king or an important official is portrayed in a public place, it has to be on a horse and equestrian statue, because otherwise, you look like an ordinary person just standing on your own 2 feet.
Yes. So do you know this whole business of the horse has 2 legs on the ground, 3 legs on the ground, or 4 legs on the ground? That has meaning pertaining to the service of that person. 2 legs on the ground is died in action. 1 leg on the ground, off the ground, is wounded, and 2 are came out of it or saw no action. So it's something to that degree. This kind of symbology, I find it really quaint and fun, because it tells you more about the person, and you can look at the statue and at least feel for them for what they endured in their death, I suppose. Sorry.
I found it interesting one time near Buras and Pablo Funes were saying that there's a specific word for a statue with 4 horses. You call it a quadriga.
Yes.
Oh, quadriga is a chariot which is fronted by 4 horses. You have a troika, which is 3 horses. That's in Russian. And I was thinking, because the Classic Planning Institute has 7 divisions, we should have 7 horses in front of us. How do you control 7 horses? So the quadriga apparently was some kind of Roman, because they never used chariots in battle after 500 BC. They just weren't used, but they were used for processions and races. So I don't know how apparently 4 horses was the edge of the capacity of a human to control a chariot with 4 horses running full tilt.
Because they had to run in parallel. But I mean, obviously you can run more because the carriages run more. But anyway, Ara, the sculpture of the Caballito was also a high technical achievement back then, because nobody had done an equestrian sculpture. Doing an equestrian sculpture in bronze is a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yes.
So it was not only the fact that they did a very difficult sculpture, but also was the first equestrian sculpture done in America. End of 18th century, very early, 1802, 1803. So
I know Leonardo da Vinci always wanted to get a massive bronze horse sculpture, but he never got the commission, and he had just done a small version.
Well, yeah, he did, but it's not saved. Whatever he did is not saved.
Yeah, it was them like.
So I want to understand, why is it difficult to create an equestrian statue?
It's because the process of creating any I think is the way the bronze is cast and melted, and then welded again. Well, I mean, we say welded, but welding didn't exist back then. The concept of welding is a modern one. So you have to use hidden rivets. You have to use enough thickness to prevent the sculpture to break. And that technique, the Greeks and the Romans mastered. But then it was, and especially building with such thin bronze, was very difficult.
Yes.
I think that was the ones, or the ones modeled after Leonardo. That one that you are showing there, that one. I think that one was modeled after Leonardo, because also note that the horse has his foot resting on a sphere, because having the foot, just one foot standing, was very complicated also for the weight loads.
Yes.
It was very, very difficult. And you needed a lot of skills to
weigh it properly. If you're going to cast it in one cast, you have to fill the legs.
Equestrian sculpture, that's Baroque sculpture, that one that you have just pointed out. That's in the Plaza Mayor de Madrid. That's a different one. So that's when the technique has evolved, because after Leonardo, a lot of people tried to do it. And also, for example, I mean, there is a sculpture in the Cathedral of Sevilla, El Giraldillo, which is a weather vane that is on top of a 100-meter tower, which, by the way, was used by McKimmett and White as inspiration for Madison Square Garden. But the Giraldillo, when you see there is a massive weather bay made of bronze, have been 500 years out there, have survived the earthquake of Lisbon of 1755. And they took it down because they thought it was in very bad condition. Because
I have a question, sorry, about Ledoux.
Yes.
So he has buildings like this, the Salt Manor.
Yes.
But then he has a lot of designs like this, which is a sphere just resting on like its bottom molecule. So it's like, that's like two different.
Yes, because Ledoux, I think that we have, Ledoux is an interesting person. Because Ledoux, again, if you read Kaufman, all these revolutionary architects, you think that all these architects were just pre-modernists. No, oh yeah, Ledoux, the sphere, the everything, the building with the penis shape, etc. But that's no. Ledoux did a building with the masculine.
He did that too. Okay, good.
They were, you could say, and I hope that this doesn't affect. They were all heads in that sense. Anyway, so all this Ledoux was a very, very wealthy architect, very popular architect. Ledoux had worked for Madame du Barry, the lover of Louis XV. Ledoux has done a lot of developments. Ledoux was very wealthy. And Ledoux was also working for the Saltworks and the tolls of Paris. So Ledoux has a lot of money, and that money gives also him the peace of mind to imagine a new society around the Saltworks that he wanted to build, because the Saltworks were supposed to be a model factory in the ideology of the ancien regime. And this is very important. It is that book is a massive piece. That article, and excuse my friends, is a massive piece of bullshit. That article is like if you read the Mathematics of the Ideal Villa, another one.
Exactly, totally useless and false.
So I don't recommend you to read that article. Well,
throw it out.
There's a library. Okay. There is a book about Ledoux that analyzes his biography. Anyway, so Ledoux was an architect of the ancien regime. Ledoux couldn't be, by any means, a revolutionary architect. Ledoux was going about to be guillotined. And he writes in his book, "The national axe is calling to my door," but they're looking for another Ledoux. Ledux's bill is talking about an ideal society of the ancien regime, and all these buildings with weird shapes, they were going to build around the Saltworks. So when you see those odd buildings, they were going to be built around that little factory that you see there. So Ledoux had the theory that it was called, the way he was designing was called architectura parlante, talking architecture. He believed on architecture as a language. And then when he designs the barrier of Paris, what he's doing is playing around with architecture. But remember that those beautiful barriers of Paris, they were the toll gates of Paris. They were another symbol of the ancien regime. So when the liberal state comes, when the revolution comes, and Ledoux is still alive, Ledoux dies, I think, in 1804 or 1808, or even later, Ledoux is a reminiscence of the ancien regime. People don't want him because he symbolizes two of the things that people hated more: the tolls to enter into Paris and the salt works, which were heavily taxed. So everyone hated Ledoux because he was a symbol of the ancien regime. Then, when the academicism came back with the Restoration and the Second Empire, Ledoux is hated because he's quirky. He's very simple. He's not as decorative as the new Napoleon III style. And then in the Republic, in the Third Republic, everyone hated him. They forgot about why they hated him, but they still hated him. And then Kaufman arrives and says, okay, why does everyone hate this guy? 1789, French Revolution, that's why. But Ledoux was, and I mean, Lequeux, you could argue that Lequeux was a bit more revolutionary. That's the only one of the three. Boulez was a very old man by then, had been a very successful developer, and apparently Boulez was a very charming person, because you can, when all the books that have been surviving, people complain that that I wish I could have met Monsieur Boulez. When he was younger, he might have been an amazing person. And Monsieur Boulez was always saying, yeah, when he was younger, I was very busy. Now I am rich and I don't need the time. So Boulez died, unfortunately, in oblivion. And then again was rediscovered because, why is this guy doing this crazy stuff? Boulez, provocative things. Boulez was never...
Pablo, you will excuse me. I apologize and I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
But I would like you to give some hints to the students who are watching a program. All of this French architecture, what can they learn so they can build beautiful buildings today?
I would say, coming back to the beginning of the presentation, especially to all the students that are listening to us in English, that you read the lesson of architecture by Durant in English, that the Getty Foundation has translated Durant into English, and I encourage all of you to read Durant in English. If you want to learn a very basic and very effective way of composing and designing classical architecture, it's not the best, but it's the most...
Okay. Let me interrupt you.
Yes, please.
Will they learn something from reading the original that they will not get from Near's book?
No, I'm really, really sorry. I think that Durand was a fabulous experiment in trying to rationalize design. You don't need Durand for any reasonably sized building where you're going to have a combination of small, medium, and large rooms.
And he's making comments.
If you figure it out, you don't really need his approach. It's too much, too technical, too rational. And frankly, the French contribution to architecture has been 100%. The intellectual contribution is about rationalism, which is absolutely useless. And the artistic contribution has been huge because of the great talent of the architects, because the French have a thing about beauty and they do it really, really well. And they have been doing it since Roman times. So the idea of French culture being capable of creating wonderful places or teaching other people like Grand Central Terminal how to make wonderful places, it has been in place since Roman times. The idea of all of the French rationalism is like, are you kidding me? Is this how to do it? So
I noticed a lot of great films. They use this building as a backdrop.
Professor Funes, but that's the beauty of all this, because he has his opinion.
What I would say, in my defense, I have put the Durant's book there for the audience, is that obviously doing that building is very beautiful. But I'm going to make an analogy with going to the gym. You go to the gym and you see all these gym bros lifting 100 kilos. Yes, weightlifting. You go to the gym for the first time and you cannot lift that. And you see all these guys with the muscles. You need to start slow. Durant is the way for you. If you know nothing, it's a good way to start.
I really disagree. I think that
look. I'm going to support. I'm going to support. Look. I'm going to support Near, even though he criticized me in a nasty way today. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time with his old French stuff. Read Near's book, The Art of Classic Planning. This is for the students. It will make you an architect. Plus, you read other stuff like Christopher Alexander and
we actually, all of us have been discussing, and this is a conversation where Professor Funes is leading the conversation because he's interested in architectural education. And architectural education wasn't the thing until the late 1600s, early 1700s, with the
mid-1700s
academy. Yeah. With the academy that Louis XIV created. It was shut down during the Revolution. The École de Chaussée, Pont de Chaussée, bridges and roads of the French army continued. I think that became the Polytechnique, or that's a third thing. I don't know.
No, the École de Pont de Chaussée was happening at the same time of the academy. Was actually the engineers branch.
It started the same time, but then the academy failed. It continued until the academy was reestablished. I don't know where the Polytechnique.
It was no. The Polytechnique comes after the Polytechnique and the Beaux-Arts. Both of them appear after the Revolution.
Right, and the Beaux-Arts was the extension of the academy, and that was the idea.
Correct, and the Polytechnique was the extension.
They had a method of teaching, and Durand came from the École, right?
Correct. Durand comes from an engineering background.
So he came from the Chaussée.
architecture school went from being an academy to being a studio where every person is kind of working on their own thing. But there was at one point where architecture school was like an academy where you were learning techniques and methods and tools.
No. It was called, the school was called academy. So you would go to a building to learn architecture, and that was the Academy of Architecture, the Royal Academy of Architecture. It was, initially it wasn't even a place to learn architecture. It was a place for architects to gather, and then eventually.
Excuse me, we had a question from what seemed like to be a student. Can you bring that up? Are there any examples of smaller projects, specifically pocket neighborhoods, using classic design planning? Absolutely. There are many successful in the United States.
Where are you located? Where's this?
Yeah, tell us where you're located.
We can turn them on to wherever they are.
Many in the UK, many in France, many in Italy, and they're all designed by people whom we know and we work with.
And in the United States, any neighborhood built before 1920 was such a neighborhood.
Right, but I think the person who asked wants to know contemporary stuff. And there is a variety of excellent contemporary stuff that's never covered by the press, certainly not by the architectural press. It's buried. Because the architectural press focuses on star architecture and fashionable nonsense.
Could we say seaside? What is
Orlando, Florida? You're there. You're seaside.
Seaside. Check it out. Check out what's that other place on the other coast where Leon Creer's project is building. But you want to actually see Coral Gables. If you need to, go check out Coral Gables. It has good architecture all the way through. And there's several other neighborhoods like that in the region. Coral Gables is quite attractive.
Right.
What is outside of well, that's the Biltmore in Coral Gables. And actually, you're with your back to Coral Gables. If you turn around 180 degrees, you will see the town. It has 4 neighborhoods, each one designed in a different architectural style with more or less success. The most exotic is the Chinese style neighborhood, which you'll be interested to check out. And then it has these quite lovely gate structures. And then, of course, you have the city hall, etc. in Coral Gables. Isn't that pretty cool? 1920s, 30s?
That's
why not?
Isn't
that nice? So, I would study, if you're really interested in neighborhoody stuff. Seaside is very interesting for itself. Learn the lessons you can learn from there, and don't limit your questioning, is what I would say. Learn and question.
Well, I come back to my original point. There are many excellent medium density new developments around the world using traditional architecture and urbanism that are simply not covered in the press. So you have to look for them. You have to know what you're looking for, and you have to discover them. And then you see, or you're in contact, with us, and we can tell you the names of the architects.
Yes, and usually anything built before 1920 qualifies. In some cases, 1930. You have them everywhere in the U.S., everywhere.
Okay, here's Ciudad Cayala in Guatemala, designed by our friend Leon Creer, the late Leon Creer.
And also Estudio Urbano, Maria Sanchez.
Maria Sanchez and Pedro Godoy.
Yep.
This is like 5 years old. Okay.
And Valdigop. I could say, you are asking for something. I did buildings in Valdigop, so I could say Valdigop.
Oh, okay.
Well, I didn't do myself.
Here they are, the picture on the top left. They're lovely people. Go work for them. It's always good to work for good people.
Yeah, here's Maria and Pedro and Leon in the back. We lost Leon
last year.
Yeah.
Yep. We misplaced him.
Oh, he went off to the sky to be a concert pianist because he always wanted to be a concert pianist.
Yeah, go find Val d'Europe. It's Plessis.
Plessy Robinson.
Yeah, and Durand, by the way, is spelled with a D at the end. This plaza in Val d'Europe is the same. It's exactly the same footprint as the plaza in Lucca, Italy.
Oh,
Is it the Lucca or is it Siena? No, it's Lucca. It's Lucca.
It's not Siena.
No, I know. Yeah, because it's also representing the idea of an old amphitheater converted into a square. It was something that happened a lot in the Middle Ages.
Yes.
You can see many places. Lucca, you can see that in Tarragona. You can see that in Piazza Navona in Rome, in many places.
So before we lose the thread, Bontempi is a fantastic architect. Before we lose the thread, there are so many excellent architects today producing human scale, very attractive, very healthy, emotionally healthy buildings and building complexes and urban spaces that are not covered by intention, that are not covered by the architectural press. Yeah. And when a famous architect is asked about him, they say, we don't care about that. That's old-fashioned nonsense, or that's fascist, or that's totally useless.
We need to encourage the audience to check alternative media like The Aesthetic City or Michael Diamond, or, of course, our Classic Planning Herald, which is our magazine, or the Classic Planning Institute.
And the Salon of Classical Architecture, which you run.
Which I lead. Now we have moved to Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. London time. So apparently it has become more successful than when we were doing on Saturdays. So we are moving, we are making things, we're making changes, and because we're in the process of integrating, and that is the last issue, which was featuring my boss, Catherine Pooley, which I encourage all of you to read her interview, because she is one of the most wonderful designers that you can find in the world. She's not paying me for this. And these are my business at the Salon of Classical Architecture.
Okay, I noticed we're over an hour. Should we sum up?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, I'm hoping we touched on so many things. I'm hoping you guys could help me come up with a title for this, because we touched on so many things. I don't know.
Well, we talked about postmodernism. We talked about the French approach to design. We talked about complexity, and we talked about latter-day platforms.
Why don't you call it complexity and contradiction in postmodern architecture?
How about sure, that sounds great. You got us all to smile, it's got to be a good thing. Bravo.
Okay, but I can safely say that in a video like this, more questions are posed. It can be the basis of a whole semester of investigating these topics. And these topics are not touched in architecture school.
No. Actually, we have to make a pitch for the PhD program at the Classic Planning Academy. It is starting in April. We are going to have seminars on the Wednesdays.
Sorry? We're starting in September.
Is that what you're planning? Okay. Yes, we're starting in September. We are going to have accreditation in the United States from an accreditation institution that accredits Harvard. We are very serious about this. Anybody who has always wanted to take a little bit of time for studying on their own and really understanding why things look the way they do is invited to do this, regardless of age and regardless of background, because all we require is a master's degree coming in the door. And if you don't have a degree, but you have 10, 20, 30 years of experience and want a degree, we have the capacity to actually accept you with a transcript and help you get
what I would say for the audience, as to resume to what Dr. Buras is saying, please contact us. Everyone is welcome to apply, and we will study every application in a case-by-case scenario. Everyone is welcome. and it will be Dr. Buras, myself, and the wonderful Michelle Sovji, who will be the coordinator of the seminar. It will be focused on, what was the name of the grid? We agreed it was like traditional architecture with a focus on architectural conservation, or the other way around?
That's what we're starting out with now.
Yes.
And
So we are going to open, we are going to deal with the topic as and these links with the way Nikos has been expressing before. We are going to do it in a way that you are not seeing in the schools of architecture. We are going to teach architectural conservation from the point of traditionalism. We are not
we're
going
going to use conservation because it deals with construction and design as a framework for going through all these topics, the history, the stories. Mostly we like gossip, and we are looking to have conversations. These are seminars. They're part of the PhD program. The other part is the year 1 and year 2 classes. The seminars, basically, I'm personally looking to be entertained by smart people with good questions.
Okay, can we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Yep.
So thank you, Pablo, for joining us as a special guest.
Thank you. I've been the special guest of the month, so thank you for changing the time so that I can come to the. So thank you, Ara, for doing that, so that I can come. I think that next week we will have to do it 1 hour later, because next week I'm teaching. This week I wasn't. I was on the launching of the Cambridge program.
Wait, 1 hour later than now?
1 hour later than now. I think that we are having a little bit of an overlap with the timings, but it will be 1 hour later than today. So sorry for the audience for the changing times. I mean, I am unpredictable. But yeah, so thank you very much for accommodating that to bring me this month to the program.
Right. Yeah. So Nikos, I believe, is not teaching on Thursdays. He teaches Wednesday and Friday. So
Right.
I believe.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Okay.
Okay, we'll figure it out. Okay.
This was very nice.
Bye, everyone.
Guys, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Night. Have a good, lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.